So in today's tutorial, we'll discuss units and measurements. We'll move to significant figures. Then we'll also see how we usually round off, okay? Then we'll end with conversion issues to do with conversions. Okay, so let's start. Now, we have two types of measurements, okay? So there's what we call quantitative measurements, and what we call qualitative measurements, okay? Qualitative measurements, okay? So now you need to know the difference between these two types of measurements, okay? So let's start with quantitative measurements. In your own term, what are quantitative measurements? Anyone to give it a try? What are quantitative measurements? Okay. And what are qualitative measurements? Okay. So when we talk about quantitative measurements, we are simply talking about measurements that usually involve numbers. Okay. So these are measurements that involves numbers. Okay. So that involves numbers. Those are going to be called quantitative measurements. Okay. So for example, you're doing a titration. Okay. Then you get the volume of 10 milliliter. Okay. So that volume is actually a quantitative measurement. Okay. So the quantitative measurements will usually have two parts. Okay. So the number and the units. Okay. So you end up having all those measurements that are going to involve digits are going to be called quantitative measurements. Okay. So now we have also other types of measurements which are called qualitative measurements. Okay. So for qualitative measurements, they are the opposite of quantitative measurements. So qualitative measurements are measurements that do not involve numbers. Okay. So for example, you are doing an experiment, then you say, okay, a pungent smell. Okay. Let's say you say litmus paper turns blue. Okay. So you are just observing maybe the change in color, maybe the smell. Okay. So those are going to be called qualitative measurements. They usually do not involve numbers. Okay. So that's what you need to know. So you need to understand the difference between quantitative measurements and qualitative measurements there. Okay. So I hope everything is clear there. If there are no questions, we can proceed unless there's a question. Okay. Okay, so now we have what we call significant figures. In your own terms, what are significant figures? Okay, what are significant figures? Anyone to give it a try? What are significant figures? Okay, so as we are doing our measurements, there are those numbers that are going to be important in our measurements. Okay, those are going to be significant figures. Okay, so now there are rules in which we use to come up with the significant figures. Okay, so we can have what we call the first rule. Okay, so rule number one, you need to know that all non-zero numbers. Okay, so all non-zero numbers are significant figures. Okay, so all non-zero numbers are significant figures. Okay, so we are talking about numbers from 1 to 9. These are significant figures. Okay, so all non-zero numbers going to be significant figures. Okay, so when it comes to zeros, okay, there are types of zeros. So we are going to find zeros that are going to be in between non-zero numbers. Okay. So if we have zeros that are in between non-zero numbers, for example, we get a number which is looking like this. Let's say 109. Okay. So we have a zero here which is in between two non-zero numbers. Okay. So such a zero is going to be significant figure. So in this case, in this number, we have 3 significant figures. Okay. So that's what we have. Okay. So we can have a number, let's say 1003. Okay, so we have these zeros, they are in between non-zero numbers. Okay, so these zeros are going to be significant figures. Okay, so those are the types of zeros you can have. Okay, you can also have what we call trading zeros. So trading zeros are zeros that are going to be at the end of the number. Okay, so we have what we call trading zeros. Okay, now these trading zeros, if you have a number which is not having any decimal point in it, okay, and then you have trading zeros, these zeros are not going to be significant, okay, if there's no decimal point. So for example, you get a 2,500, okay, there's no decimal point here. So these zeros, these are trading zeros, and they are not going to be significant in this case, okay. So here in this number, you are going to have two significant figures, okay. So that's what we have. Okay, so we can also have zeros, which are trading zeros, but maybe they come after a decimal point. For example, this one here, the one we've been given, let's say 2.00. Okay, so there's a decimal point here. Since there's a decimal point, and these, yes, are trading zeros, but they come after a decimal point, so these guys are going to be significant. So in this case, we are going to have three significant figures. Okay. So that's it with trading zeros. Okay, so if they are trading zeros, if there's no decimal point, they are not going to be significant. Okay, if there's a decimal point, then they are going to be significant. Okay, so that's what you need to know. Okay, so that's with trading zeros. You can also have another type of zeros which we call the leading zeros. Now, leading zeros are zeros that are going to be in front of a number. Okay, so we have what we call leading zeros. Okay. So leading zeros are zeros that are going to be in front of the number. Okay. So for example, you have 0.00250. Okay. So these are leading zeros here. These are leading zero. Then this one is going to be a trading zero. So you can see here, it's a trading zero, but it's coming after a decimal point. So this guy is going to be significant in this case. Okay. But we have these zeros which are in front of numbers. For leading zeros, all leading zeros are not significant. It doesn't matter whether there is a decimal place or there is no decimal place. These are not significant figures. Okay. So let me just submit some. Okay. Yeah. So these guys are not significant in this case. Okay. So in this case, we are going to have three significant figures in this value. Okay. So that's what we have. So those are some of the rules that you need to follow when it comes to significant figures. There a question? Someone's mic is on. Okay. Do we have a question up to here? Okay. So I hope we are getting whatever we are doing. Towards the end, we're going to have our questions from the tutorial sheet so that we see how we are going to answer them. Okay. So we move. Okay. So we go to applying the rules of significant figures when we are dealing with operations. Okay, so we know that we have four operations. Those are going to be addition. Okay, so we can have subtraction, can also have multiplication and division. Okay, so these are the four operations we have. So how do we apply the rules of significant figures when dealing with these operations? Okay, so when you are adding or subtracting, okay, so when you are adding or subtracting, the way you apply the rules of significant figures here, you get the one with the least decimal place. Okay, so let's say, for example, you're adding numbers. Okay, so for example, this example we've been given here, you can clearly see here, this one has one decimal place, and this one has two decimal places. Okay, so here, when adding numbers, you can see here we're adding this one with two decimal places and this one with one decimal place. Okay, so in this case, when adding and subtracting, you follow the one with the least decimal places. Okay, so the one here with the least decimal place is 3.2, it has 1 decimal place. Then the other one has 2 decimal places. Okay, so we follow the one with the least. Okay, so in this case, our answer should have 1 decimal place. That is when you are adding or subtracting. Okay, so in this case, you can see here, when we add 3.2 plus 4.62, we are getting 7.89. And we've made mention that the one with this least decimal places here, it's 3.2. Okay, so meaning our answer should have 1 decimal place. So we usually convert. Okay, okay, yeah. So we usually leave our answer to 1 decimal place. So in this case, we have a 2, which is less than 5. So we'll drop a 2. Okay, so we'll remain with an 8 there. Okay, so that's what you need to apply. Is there a question? Okay, Juliet. Okay, kindly turn off your mic if there is no question. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so that's what you do when you are adding or subtracting. You follow the one with the least number of decimal places. Okay, so but what happens when you are multiplying or dividing? Okay, so when you are multiplying or dividing, we follow the one with the least number of significant figures. Okay, so here we are following the least decimal places. Here we are following the least significant figures. Okay, so for example, here you can see we are adding this number. So how many significant figures are we having? If you've been following, how many significant figures are we having in that number? And how many are we having in this number? Okay, so let's start with the first one. How many significant figures are there? Those ones who've joined late should be able to follow now. Okay, so how many significant figures are here? So we've said these are leading zeros, so they are not going to be significant. So in this case, we have 2 significant figures in this number. Okay, then if we check the other one, this one, so these are leading zeros, these are trading zeros. Leading zeros are always not significant. Okay, so in this case, these are not significant figures. But these trading zeros, the trading zeros, they are at the end of the number here, but they are after a point. So in this case, they are going to be significant. Okay, so in this number, we have about 1, 2, 3, 4 significant figures. Okay, so that's what we have. So when we are multiplying, definitely we are going to get this when we multiply these two numbers. Then we follow the one with this significant figure. Okay, so here we have 2 significant figures, and then here we have 3 significant figures, meaning our final answer should have 2 significant figures. Okay, so you can clearly see here, we end here. So these are trading zeros. In that case, they are not going to be significant. Okay, then we have a 5. Okay, so we'll get a 1 and add it there. Then we end up having 83, like that. Okay, so those are the rules you apply when adding or when multiplying or dividing numbers. Okay, so summary, when you are adding or subtracting, you follow the one with the least decimal places. When you are multiplying or dividing, follow the one with the least significant figures. Okay, so I hope all is well. We can move to the other concept. Okay, unless there's a question. Okay, so if there's no question, we can move to issues to do with rounding off. Okay, so here it's where you need to be careful. Okay, so these rules are supposed to be applied at your level. You are now supposed to apply these rules. Okay, so most of the time, people believe that whenever you're having a 5 and then there's a number in front, you always get a 1 and then you add it to the next number. But no, okay? So the rules need to be changed now, okay? So whatever you used to believe, you need to change, okay? So now we'll apply some other rules when adding that one or not adding, when to add a 1 or not to add that one, okay? So we start with the first scenario here. Okay, so you know that any number that is less than 5, you are going to drop it. Okay, so for example, you have a number here which is 7.82. Okay, so you see these two, let's say we have been asked to have two significant figures here. Okay, so we have to end where 8 is there. So now we have a 2. Okay, so anything that is less than 5, we need to drop it. Okay, so we'll drop it without adding anything to the other number. Okay, so we end up having 7.8 like that. Okay, so that's what you do if you are required to leave your answer to 4 significant figures in that case. Okay, okay. Then the other thing, what happens when your number is 5? Okay, so if the number is greater than 5, definitely from 6 to 9, you usually add a 1 here. It doesn't matter whichever number is there. You always have to add a 1, okay? But we are looking at a scenario where we have 5 as the next number that needs to be dropped, okay? So there are some rules that you need to apply when 5 is the one which needs to be dropped, okay? So the first thing you do, okay, so let me just, okay. Yeah, so the first thing that you do, okay, so the first thing that you do, you check the type of number you're having, okay? So for example here, let's get this example, okay? So we are having, okay, so let's get this example. Okay, so this one, we've already mentioned that anything greater than 5, we usually add the 1. So you can see here, we had 8 there. Then this is 7. So get 1 and add it to 8. Okay, so we have 6.9. Okay, but what happens when you have a 5 now? Okay, so we usually check the number which is in front. Okay, so here we have a 5 here. Then there's a 3 in front. Okay, so we have 16.3. Now ask yourself, what type of number is 3? Okay, so remember those types of numbers. We had odd numbers, even numbers, prime numbers. Okay, so now you have to ask yourself, what type of number is next to 5? Okay, so in this case, 3 is an odd number. Okay, okay. So I hope people know what an odd number is. Okay. So I hope people know what an odd number is. Okay, so when 5 is next to an odd number, that's when you usually add a 1 here. Okay, but in a scenario where the next number is not an odd number, let's say you're having 16.25. Okay, then you are dropping a 5 there, like this one here. Okay, so you can see here we have a 2. Okay, then now we need to drop a 5, this 5 here. Okay, so in this case, we are not going to add a 1 here. If the number next to 5 is an even number, I hope people know what an even number is, okay? So numbers like 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, those are even numbers, okay? So if you're having an even number next to 5, you are not going to add a 1. So you drop it the way it is. So you're going to have 16.2 in this case, okay? So that's what we have. Okay, is there a question? Someone's mic is on. Okay, so that's what we do. Okay, so never add a 1 if the next number is an even number. Okay, so for odd numbers, you usually add a 1. Then if it's an even number, you usually drop it. Okay, okay, so that's what we have. Okay, so let's look at the next one. Okay, so for example, we have this number here. Okay, so this is an odd number. Then we have a 0 there. Okay, then in this case, we are actually going to add a 1 in that case. Okay, but in this case, we have an even number. Then we have a 0 to in 5 there. So this 5 is going to be dropped. Okay, so we are going to have 3.2. Okay, so I hope people are clear on when to drop a 5 and when to add a 1. Okay, so summary, when you have odd numbers next to 5, doesn't matter what is next behind 5 or next to 5. Okay, as long as it's an odd number. Okay, so as long as you have an odd number next, you are always going to add a 1. Okay, but for an even number, okay, so let's say we had 16.25, then we have a 0. So in this case, we are not going to add a 1 here. Okay, so we'll drop it. We'll drop a 5. Okay, because we're having a 0 here, then we have a 5, and is followed by an even number in that case. So we are not going to add a 1. So you are going to have 16.2 like that. Okay. So I hope people are clear on when to drop a 5 and when to add 1 there. Are we okay there? Okay. So if there are no questions, we can try answering this question from the tutorial sheet. Okay. So we start the first one, and I hope people participate now. Feel free to participate so that we see if we've learned. Okay. So how many significant figures are in each of the following? Okay. So we have question on 1. How many significant figures are we having there? Feel free to participate. Anyone? Okay. So how many significant figures are we having here? Okay. Yeah. So
I think there are
4 significant figures, isn't it? Yeah, true. Okay, so we have a 0 here. Okay, so this 0 is in between non-zero numbers, so it's going to be significant in this case. True. So we have 4 significant figures. Let's try the next one. How many significant figures are we going to have there?
3.
Okay, 3 significant figures. Trailing zeros are never significant. Okay, so in this case, we have 3 significant figures. True. Let's go to this one. How many significant figures are we having here? Okay. Okay. How many? Okay. So here we are going to have 3 significant figures, isn't it? So we have a 0 in between our numbers. That one is going to be significant. Then we have a trailing 0. A trailing 0, whenever there is no decimal point, this is not going to be significant. So in this case, we don't have any decimal point here. So in this case, this guy is not going to be significant. So we have 3 significant figures here. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So remember, exponentials do not affect the number of significant figures. So when you have an exponential like that, you only need to focus on the numbers you have there. So you focus on this, you ignore the exponential part. Okay, so let's have there. So how many significant figures are we having? Okay, so how many significant figures are we going to have there? Okay. Okay, so here we have zeros in between non-zero numbers. These are significant. Then we have a 0, a trailing 0 there at the end. This is also going to be significant because we have a decimal point there. Okay, so in this case, we are going to have 5 significant figures, isn't it? So that's what we have there. Okay, so we come to this one. How many significant figures are we having here? Part E, how many significant figures? Okay. Yeah, so we have a point here. These are trailing zeros, but we have a decimal point. So they are going to be significant in that case. Okay, so we have 5 significant figures. Okay, so this one, these are trailing zeros or leading zeros. We've made mention that leading zeros are never significant. Then we have a trailing 0. That trailing 0 is at the end, and then we are it's after a decimal point. So in that case, it's going to be significant. So we have 3 significant
3.
figures. True. Okay. Then here, how many are we having? The last one?
3.
3. Good. Okay. 3 significant figures. Okay. So let's try more tutorial sheet questions. Okay. So we have our calculations here. I hope people are having calculators so that we'll be moving fast. You help me with calculations. So we start, they're saying, perform the following calculations to the correct number of significant figures. So now we are applying the laws of significant figures here when dealing with operations. Okay, so let's start with the first one. So we are adding 12.0550 plus 9.05. When you add the two, what number are you getting? The entire number. Someone to be helping me with calculations. so that we move, we finish our class. Okay. Okay, so when we add there, what are we getting? We get 12.0550 plus 9.05. What are you getting?
21.105.
21.105, isn't it? Correct. Okay. So now we apply the rules of significant figures. What did we say we do when adding? Which one are we going to follow? So we have this number which is having 4 decimal places, and we have this number which is having 2 decimal places. Okay. So which one are we following? Definitely the one with the least decimal places, which is 2. Okay. So now our final answer should have 2 decimal places. So we have 21.10. Okay. So we have a 0 here, and then we have a 5. Okay. So what do we do to our 5? Should we add a 1 there or we drop it? So should we add a 1 there or we drop it? According to what we've done so far. Okay. Should we add a 1 here or we drop it? It's like that. So we need 2 significant figures. So 0, what type of number 0? Is 0 an odd number or an even number? Hello? Hello?
It's an odd number.
It's an odd number. What's the definition for odd numbers? What's an odd number? Okay. 0 is actually an even number. Okay. So even numbers are numbers that are divisible to 2. Okay. And when you divide by 2, they are not giving you any remainder. So what happens when you divide 0 by 2? What are you getting? You're getting a 0 without any remainder. So in this case, 0 is going to be an even number. 2 is an even number. Okay. So we also have 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay. Then odd numbers are numbers that are having not divisible by 2, isn't it? Those numbers where when you divide by 2, they are actually going to give you a remainder. Those are going to be odd numbers. Okay, so in this case, we have this as an even number. Then we are having a 5 following it. Okay, so following the rules of significant figures, we're actually not going to add a 1 in this case. There's a 0. There's no number there. Okay, so using the rules we followed, we've learned, we are going to have this as your final answer. Okay. So I hope everything's clear there. Okay. So that's what we are having. So we go to the next one. We are subtracting 2 numbers there. We have 27.2 minus 19.789. What are we getting when we subtract there? Okay. Let's be fast so that we finish our class. We're only remaining with 8 minutes. Okay, what are we getting there? Okay. So let's, okay.
237.
Okay, so let me just repeat. Okay. 237.411.
411.
Okay, so now we have a number which is having 1 decimal place, and we have this one which is having 3 decimal places. Okay, so we follow the one with the least decimal place, which is 1 decimal place. That's what we always do when you're subtracting or adding, isn't it? That's what we've learned. Okay, so in this case, we need to have 1 decimal place. Okay, so we have 237.4. So we need to end where 4 is. We have a 1. Anything less than 5 has to be dropped. So in this case, that's our final answer. Okay. Okay. So let's go to the next one. We are multiplying 6.21 by 103, then again by 0.150. We are actually multiplying three numbers there. What are we getting when we multiply those three numbers? Okay. What are we getting there when we multiply these three numbers? Okay. Okay. So let's be fast so that we do other things. Okay. So we get our 6.21. We multiply it with 10. Okay. So 103. Okay. Then we multiply it with
It's 95.9445.
95.9445.
9445.
Okay. So now here we are multiplying. So we follow the one with the least number of significant figures, isn't it? That's what we said. When you are dividing or multiplying, follow the one with the least significant figures. Okay. So in this case, we have three significant figures here, three significant figures, and three significant figures, meaning our final answer should have three significant figures. Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3. So we can end where 9 is. Okay. So we have 95.9 there. Okay. That's our final answer. Okay. So let's divide there. When you divide 0.0577 by 0.753, what are you getting there? Let's divide there. What are you getting? So you have 0.0577 divided by 0.753. Okay. So me, I'm getting something like 0.076626826. Okay. So we need to have, so how many significant figures are we having? So here we have three significant figures, and also here we have three significant figures, meaning our answer should have three significant figures. So these guys are not going to be significant. Okay. So we can actually write this number in scientific notation. So since these guys are not significant, so we can say, okay, so we can get 1, 2, 3. So these three are going to be significant. Okay, so we can say 0.0766, like that, isn't it? We are ending where 66 is, isn't it? There's a 2 here, which is less than 5, so we are going to drop it, okay? Or we can actually say 0, okay, so we can actually say 7.66 times 10 to the power negative 2, like that. Okay, so any of the two is going to be correct. Okay, so let's go here. Now we are multiplying these numbers, and then we divide. What are we getting there? So we do 27.5. Okay, so let's do 27.5 times 1.82. What are we getting? Then we divide by 100.04. Okay. So what are we going to get there? What are we getting? So let's be fast so that we finish the two. Then we rejoin. Then we finish with conversion of unit conversions. Okay. Okay. So you join using the same link. So what are we getting here? Okay. So we have 27.5 multiplied by 1.82. Then, okay, we divide by 100.04. Okay, so I'm getting 0.5002998. Okay, so Here, how many significant figures are we having? Here we have three significant figures, three significant figures. Definitely, we have three significant figures as the least significant figures in that case. Okay, so meaning our answer should have three significant figures. It's going to be 0.500. So these are three significant figures. Okay, so let's go to this one. Okay, so we follow board mass. So you do whatever is in the brackets, then also here in the brackets, then we follow the one. Okay, so help me with the calculations here. What are you getting? What's the final answer there? Okay. So we multiply here, we multiply there, then we divide the two. What are we getting? Okay. Okay.
So I don't have.
Okay. So let's do this. It's about to kick me out. So you join